Well, good morning, everybody. Hopefully, everybody's having a decent week and things aren't too crazy and you're surviving this very quickly moving month of May. Um, so, we're going to be talking about searching the applicant pool today. Um, I'm just kind of going over in detail some of the features on the applicant search screen. If you have any questions, like always, feel free to either use the chat feature or to unmute yourself and ask a question. I don't mind at all if you have, a question you want to ask. I'm sure other people in the webinar are probably thinking the same thing. So I welcome any and all questions and comments. So let's get rolling. So the thing I always like to remind people is when you're in actually anywhere with the job system, is users with the role of HR administrator or HR district administrator if you're part of a co-op, you have different access than other users with different roles. So that HR administrator role gives you kind of blanket access to the system. You see everything, all the confidential data and so on, where anybody with a lesser role is going to see smaller bits of data. And specifically speaking, when it comes to the applicant search screen, when you have the HR administrator role, you're going to see the all when it comes to interest types. You're going to be able to search for any and all applicants. You're going to be able to view their data, including the confidential data. You're going to be able to make edits to their applicant records, so you'll have the pencil and actually open the record up where you can add and remove a checklist item. You'll be able to email applicants, and you'll be able to go in and clear hits, put people on hold, put someone on applicant alert, add a trait, add an event, add a comment. So you have a lot more access than someone who just has a supervisor role. And so a user with a supervisor role, they can go in and they can search for applicants, and they get to view their data. And if you choose to allow them, they can email applicants. So I always remind people that, things are a little different. And when you're helping someone, like if you're in HR and you're helping a building administrator, I always like to shadow them, so to make sure we're looking at the same thing. Because it's easy to, say, well, click here and do this, and forget that they don't have that same level of access that you have. So I just like to point that out. You guys should all know that, and I'm sure you do, but we just say it anyway, just in case someone doesn't. So getting to applicant search, very simple. You're going to hover over that management tab. You're going to select applicant search. And to begin any and all searches, you have to pick an interest type. And like I said, if you're any user that has less than a HR admin role, the interest types they see are going to be determined by the role they've been given, so which supervisor role they've been given. And the supervisor roles correspond with your interest types. Supervisor 1 would be the first interest type listed on your site. And everybody gets to put things in different order, so that's why they're not, and they get to call them what they want, so that's why they don't say supervisor teacher or whatever. It's supervisor 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 9. So here's a sample from the release site of what, some interest types might look like. So the first thing, like I said, whenever you do a search, is you need to select your interest type. And that is true on every screen on the JAS system, whether you're running a report or looking at job requests or job recommendation. You have to pick that interest type so the system knows who you're looking for. The most common way to search for an applicant is by job. And that's what we usually train hiring managers first, is to come into the system, to pick the interest type, and to choose to find their job, whether it's an open job or a closed job, and then from the drop-down menu to locate their job. And once again, when we go back to talking about hiring managers, they're typically limited to only seeing jobs at the location or locations they're assigned to. And that comes up a lot too. They're like, well, they can't see this job. And I'll say, well, where are they assigned? And oftentimes people will say, what do you mean? And in a minute we can go to the release site and go to employee information and make sure people are aware of how to assign someone a location or change someone's location. And a user can have up to 3 locations, so they can see jobs at 3 different locations. Or if they're going to see jobs at all locations, you can give them the role of program manager. So that's the most common way to search for applicants is by job. And probably the second most common way to search for an applicant is by their name. And that's using the name tool. And you're supposed to select an interest type. If you're in HR, it's really easy because you can click any and find everyone. For hiring managers, it's a little more difficult because they better hope that the person they're looking for has the corresponding interest type that they select when they go to the Alpha tool. And you just click on the first letter of the last name, and then in the drop-down dot box, you can either start typing or you can scroll and find the name of the individual that they are searching for. You do have an option to hide the Alpha tool from your hiring managers. There are some districts that only let their hiring managers search by job. They don't think they need to look for people individually, and so they eliminate that ability. So you do have that option to turn that on or off. It's a default in the lookup tables, and if that's something you need to consider, reach out to support, and we can help you with that setting. In addition to those 2 basic search criteria or searching options, there are unlimited possibilities to help you whittle down or find applicants. Another way to look for them is by date ranges, and there are 4 different tools on the page just underneath the name tool that are available. There's the date submitted, the last visit date, the last applied date, and the status date. And a quick brief explanation of what each of those mean. Date submitted is just that. It's the date that the applicant completed the electronic signature or the submit date on their application. That doesn't necessarily, that's different than the date they applied for a job. It's the date that they submitted their electronic signature. It's that checklist item. So you could put in a date range and find applicants that fall within that range. You can also look for applicants based on the last time they logged into their account by that last visit date. That's what that one stands for. Last applied. So you can look for the date they applied to a job within a date range. So you can say you could use that in multiple ways. So you could pick a specific job if you wanted and then put in a date range and just see of this job, I want to know the applicants that applied within this time frame or however you want it. So you can use filters together, like by job, and then add in a date range if you needed. So that's a way they could work together in tandem, so to speak. And then status. Status works in tandem with the status filter. So you have to pick a status, like maybe complete. So I want to know of this, of this interest type or this job or whatever. So of the certificated teachers, I want to know who became complete within this date range. So it's one that you kind of pick a couple other criteria and then you put in within it because you need to identify the status that you want the date range for, if that makes sense. So those are the date filters that you can use when it comes to searching and narrowing your pool and trying to find specific data within your pool. Hopefully that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions about searching by date? I will add, you can make it open-ended. You don't have to put in a from, but you could just put a to, or vice versa. And you can play around and experiment with the date range. It's kind of interesting how it works and the different results you get when you change the parameters just slightly. Okay. And then you have the only and the exclude filters. And we teach you how to use the filter only when you're working with disclosure hits. But there are actually a bunch of other boxes in that section that are kind of helpful as well when it comes for looking for information or trying to not include information if you're using the exclude when it comes for searching. So there's the option to find people who have a hold on their account, so that's the hold box, or people who have a hit, or you can do a hit and a hold if you check both. When you're running a list, so maybe you pick a job and you only want the applicants with the employee that are employees, so that have the employee role, so you would check the employee box, and it would limit that list down to just the employees. You could go and pull a list of all the applicants in your pool that when they completed their profile said, yeah, I'm interested in being a substitute, by checking the sub-interest box. If you are a district that uses the Screen OK and the job screening, you can come in and pull a list from the HR side of things of who you screened OK. Hiring managers only see people that are screened OK, but you have the ability to filter that. Same with archived. You can, if you're looking at old job data, you might pull up a job and say, now I know more people applied to this job, so if you check the box to include archived, it's going to remember to pull those people, to include those people on the list that have been archived. A note about the only and the exclude filters. Hiring managers don't necessarily see all those boxes. They're limited because they don't know who has hits and holds or who's been cleared and whatnot. So if you shadow a hiring manager, it doesn't look exactly the same. So remember that. They don't have all these same boxes that you as an HR admin would have. And then the same, or the exclude kind of works in reverse. So if I were to run a list of my hits and holds, but I didn't want to see the people I've already cleared, I check the not cleared and it just doesn't put them on the list. Or if I wanted to pull a job, but I didn't want the person I'd been hired for the job to be listed, I could check the box to exclude the person who was hired. And that's a good way if you were going to send out in job reports, if you wanted to do an email merge, the create merge tool, send out a message, you could exclude the hired person and send out like a thanks but no thanks letter. That's the way that would work. And then lastly, if you wanted to pull a list but not list the everybody but the employees, same idea, exclude the employees. So that's the only and exclude filters. Okay. There are even more filters, and so on the screen there's a button to, we used to have them little plus signs, but now we've, to try to give you more real estate on the page and move the search button up, we've changed it so there's this little open filter button, and if you click on that, it opens the screen and it gives you even more options for filtering and finding data. Gives you the ability to search for applicants based on the preferences they selected and their profile, any endorsements they list on their checklist, any traits that you have added to their record, any majors that they've listed on their educational record, any licenses that they've added. And this is where you would go to find the status or to set a status if you're searching by date or if you just wanted to search by status. And then we also give the ability if you wanted to search by experience, and you would pick the type of experience. So I selected teaching. A note of caution, when you're searching by experience, you need to put in the number of years. There is an option for 0, but it's going to give you the minimum number of years, and it'll like a cutoff. So if you want 2 or more is how that would work, or 1 or more years of teaching. If you don't put in a number under the years, you will get an error or it just won't work. It'll tell you, I can't remember exactly what it'll do. So this works in tandem. You have to do the experience and set a number of years as your cutoff. You have the option to select between and or. So do you care, do you want pending or complete, or do, which would make sense with status, but maybe on preference, you want someone who has first and second selected. So that's what the and or radio buttons. It would change the way the search is run. Those parameters would change to help either narrow or hone your search to get you the information you're looking for. So those are different filters that you have the ability to use. Example of why you might want to use these. Maybe you have a hard to fill position, or maybe someone's going on a long-term substitute and you need to find someone to fill in, and you could go to your applicant pool and maybe look by an endorsement. Maybe it's maybe you've got a mathematics teacher going on long-term sub, and you could go and look for someone that has an endorsement that fits that position, and go and see who in your applicant pool has an endorsement that would fit. And you can maybe even use some of those date filters like the last visited, so you're not looking at old applicants. And you can maybe see if someone within your pool fits that, and then you could reach out to them and email them and saying, hey, are you still interested in working for us? We have an opportunity. So that's a way to use the applicant search screen besides just looking at who's applied for your open positions. I don't know if that helps or not, but just something to consider. Below this, there's also, you have the ability to filter by screens. There's file screen. There's also job screen, but since I selected the file screen, the job screen went away. So if you're a district that uses file screens, you could select the file screen, and then if you wanted to limit the list, you could pick your average score, so it'd have to be that or greater than, and it would not list people that had a less than score. You could go and actually filter for preferences by ordered. So you could say who selected special education as their top preference, and so on. You can select by events that you've added to a person's record, languages that they spoke. So if you're in desperate need of an interpreter, you go to your pool and say, who in my applicant pool speaks Spanish? And it's another way to mine for data and look for information. You can look for education, the state, or even the institution someone went to school at if you needed to. And lastly, one of my favorite things is you can also look for people who are missing information. And that can be helpful when you're doing screening. If you're working on a big group of people, you could look for people who you haven't screened yet by pulling up a list of people, say, well, who doesn't have this screen done yet, or so on, or who's missing a trait, or who's missing an event. It's another way to manage groups of applicants. Questions? So after you've decided what you want to search for, how you want to search for, it's simple. You're going to go set your criteria, and you're going to press search. And then your information always displays in the bottom of the screen. And you guys, I'm sure, are well aware of what each thing means, And if not, I put in a little table, the pencil, you click on to edit a record, ID, name, status, all that good stuff shows up here. And I'll send you the copy of the PowerPoint. Applicant reports is very similar to applicant search. So if you do this, if you're searching in applicant search, you can do almost the exact same type of searching and looking for data and kind of dialing down for information in applicant reports as well. It's a little different because we don't have, it's still the old style screen where you click the pluses to open to get to the different areas. But it's there, and you'll see you can do by date. There's not as many boxes to look at when it comes to limiting and everything, but it's still there. And then you would be able to run reports and get lists that you could actually print off, or if you wanted, or save as a PDF or export to Excel. So let's go and actually look at the release site. And if people have questions, we can talk about them. But yeah, when it comes to searching, you really have lots and lots of possibilities for finding data. So you can keep it really simple and just search, do a really open-ended search, like saying, I want to see everybody that's a teacher, because you can search by interest type and there's your list. Or you can open your filters and really dial in and look for specific information, like I want someone who has a mathematics endorsement. And then you can keep searching and kind of looking and finding and see nobody has that because this is my release site. But that's just one way, that's not one way, but ways that you can use applicant search in a little different way than just looking at jobs. Questions? I'm going to stop talking. I'll point out down here, so file screen, you'd select it, you don't have to put in an average if you don't want to. It's just a way to limit or to kind of bring down a list. And then there's also the job screen if you use job screen. And if you want, you can use an average or not. Like I said, if you pick one, the other goes away. Trying to think of anything important that I should point out. Hopefully you guys know about these extra filters and use them from time to time. And when you're done with them, you can close them. And there's your search button there. But other than that, that's really all I have to offer on searching your pool. I'll stay on the line and answer questions. And if not, you're free to go. And thank you for joining me today.